Dana's own Dana Black coming to you live. Yes, you know I do. I come live from Black Pearl Studios, right here doing our thing. Shout out to Harold Bell and Jumbo Love over at Radio Next for giving me the original platform. And now we are up here doing our thing. Happy New Year! Yes, this is our first show of the year. Happy New Year to all my Democrats out there. I hope you guys had a lot of fun, got all the gifts you wanted, made the kiddies happy. Me, I was the Grinch, and I was real happy to be the Grinch that year. Go scroll through my Facebook page. I was a Grinch. And I loved it. I was trying to bypass the holiday season, but there were a few people who wouldn't let me. But New Year's was cool, toasted in with some amazing friends, and now here we are finally. 2020. It's on and popping, and Republicans are doing dumb stuff already. It didn't take them any time to file any stupid bills in our state house. Let's listen. Impeachment is one thing, and what's going on at the Fed level is one thing, but you know me, I want us to focus in on Indiana politics from the left side of things, so let's talk about what's happening in that state house. Already, there's a couple of bills that y'all are not going to like. You know they got a bill, the Republicans introduced a bill that says that every public school must have emblazoned and emboldened somewhere in the school that says, "In God we trust." And the argument for this particular bill is, well, it's on our money. It shouldn't be that controversial. It's on our money. Well, first of all, I ain't really held a dollar bill in a long time because I do all electronic transactions, so I don't actually see that anymore. But there are so many people who don't believe in one God and some people who believe in multiple gods. So which God are you talking about? And school, listen, I'm not interested. If I had a kid, if I wanted my child to have a religious education, I would send them to a religious school. Public education should be open to everybody regardless of their belief system. So some of y'all want to say bring, prayer back to church, whatever. I mean, prayer back to church. Is that a Freudian slip or what? I'm going to let the divine work that one through. Prayer back in school. Okay, as long as everybody can pray silently the way they want to pray. That means if you're going to pray, if your Christians going to pray the way they pray, I want to make sure that you have space for our Muslims to pray however often they pray, because I know they do it like 5 times a day. So if you're going to give it to one, you got to give it to all. But I just honestly think this is a waste of time and a waste of energy. Listen, people, and the other part of the bill, the schools have to pay for this themselves. Now, mind you, we already know that they voted down any one-time teacher bonuses, with that surplus and reserve that we have. We don't want teachers to get paid. But school systems, make sure that you have it in every school in your school district. This plaque. And even specify the size and all of that. Dog, really? You worried about schools paying for placards, but you're not worried about schools paying for the tools that the teachers need to teach the students and the tools that the students need to learn? That's what you should be focusing in on. Don't get me wrong. If you trust in God, do your thing. Trust me, I am not hating on my religious believers. That's not it. But that's not what public schools should be for. And if you want your child to have a parochial education, send them to a parochial school. Do that thing. Just don't use my public tax dollars for your parochial schools. I'm just saying. Because some of them parochial schools don't like people like me or people who have parents like me. I'm just saying. Another fun bill that they have out there is, the BMV has been working diligently to create gender-neutral driver's licenses and IDs for people who don't identify. Right? Or they're just not binary. They're not down with that male, female, and that's it. Now listen, to all you folk out there who go, well, Dana, you're one or the other. There's only males and there's only females. Well, obviously you haven't picked up a science book in a while. We already know that there are people born with multiple variations of the chromosomes and the XYs and body parts and the physical anatomy that doesn't necessarily match up. We have scientific evidence now. See, back in the day, what would happen is if your child came out as an intersex person, or from our older folk, hermaphrodites. I know, right? You missed that word. intersex, then the doctor and the parent would make a decision. They would make a decision. Flip a coin. You got a 50-50 shot of getting it right. And sometimes they would get it wrong. And so now you have people who've had their bodies mutilated before they even had time to make a decision about what to do with their body. And it's the wrong decision. And then y'all mad because you got men who were on their birth certificate say they're men, but they much prefer dresses. They much prefer to identify as females. You don't think there's some science involved in that? So for all you people that think that humanity is binary, check a science book. I'm just saying, read something. Read something. So, Senator Tomes, hopefully that little bill will go bye-bye as well. Because certainly you have more things to worry about than how other people identify themselves on their state ID or driver's license. There you go, trying to impose your will on other people. Because I thought Republicans want small government and let me make my own choices. Unless it's a choice they don't like. All right, one more thing I want to talk about before I introduce my amazing guests. Because, you know, I got a hot lineup. Not only are they cute and intelligent, they just fun. Anyway.
I agree with that.
The census, y'all. You know I'm talking about the census. Apply online. Continue to consider volunteering for the census. I actually typed the link on the feed today, so all you have to do is click on it. You can go to the site, log in. I've actually applied. They're paying $25 an hour for you to canvass and do the census. Now, flip side of that is, folk, do not be scared to answer the census. Because you have to understand, in order for our communities to get the dollars that they need and the representation that they need, it requires the census. Listen, this is not the Tuskegee experiment, right? This is not some government conspiracy to come get you, lock you up, do something crazy to you. This is about making sure that you are counted. Trust, know, and believe there are people out there that don't want you to be counted. That's why you've not heard any advertisement about the census. That's why you've not heard any of our state and local officials really making a push about this. We need to be counted. We need to be counted. I am going to be out there trying to count people, but make sure that you're counted. And why is it so important? Let's draw the line. Let's connect the dots, right? A lot of folks talk about the supermajority in our state house. There's a supermajority in our state house because of gerrymandering. There's gerrymandering because the Republicans who have the majority drew the lines. They drew the lines, right? But how you fix this, right, is through the census. You have to start there, because where the population is will determine who gets elected and how those lines are drawn. And then we can talk about real things like making sure we're funding public education, making sure that we're doing things in Indiana to protect our environment instead of treating it like a trash can. Those are how we get real things done. So please, 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 do not sleep on the 2020 census. It is way too important, and we all have to be counted. If you want those tax dollars for your community organizations, you got to do the census. If you feel like your school system needs a little bit more money, you got to do the census. You got to get counted, all right? Don't sweat the small stuff. If the Gestapo comes for you, just call me up. Just call me up. I'll come, because, you know, in Indiana, I can carry whatever I want to carry, and they not coming. I don't own a gun. Y'all know that. I'm a lover, not a fighter. Y'all know that. All right. For the first show in 2020.
Oh, it is.
Yeah. That's right, because I took 2 weeks off, baby. I had to rejuvenate.
Well deserved.
You know, yeah. 19 was an interesting year. We're gonna leave that back there. For my first show, Young Gets It Done, baby. We've got some young, amazing Democrats who have been doing things for a very long time. First up, I got my man. He's running for House District, Senate District 35?
That's right.
Yep. Oh, old lady. I try to remember them all. Pete Cowden, welcome to the show. Welcome to Turn Left, sir.
Thank you very much.
And y'all know I'm in love with this dude. Listen, he has been our Marion County Executive Director. He currently works currently, right now, in the Marion County Treasurer's Office. When I was a candidate in 2016, whenever I called and asked him about, you know, real rules and unspoken rules, he was right there to answer every question I had. Y'all, Give it up to my homeboy, not just somebody running for office, but my dear friend, Josh Peters. What's happening?
Thank you for having me. You really oversold that. You know that?
No, man. Listen, I talk too much to lie. So, what you see is what you get. Welcome to the show, guys. Listen, before we get into who you guys are, let's talk about the census real quick. I kind of hit on some points. Please feel free to, because I want to make sure that everyone understands it's not just what Indiana's own is saying. It's what we need to do. From a local government point of view, talk about the importance of the census.
Well, yeah, I mean, absolutely. If we don't know how many residents we have, it's impossible for us to know how to deliver services to them. And it probably does have a bigger effect at the state and national level because of gerrymandering and issues like that. But, I mean, it's absolutely imperative. And I know that there is stress around responding to the census for some communities, but I would do exactly what you've done, which is encourage people to participate. If, especially, one thing I think could be one of the biggest issues we could have is if we lose representation in Congress. I mean, if we lose a congressional district, it could be really terrible and have a terrible effect on not only our ability to have representation in the U.S. Congress, but also to make sure that we have at least one or two Democrats representing Indiana in the U.S. Congress. So,
because that's what we down to.
Absolutely. I would just echo what you'd said, which is it's absolutely vital that we participate. And I think it's great that you've decided to do some canvassing as well and do the count. You're going to help count, huh?
I mean, I'm out knocking doors anyway. I might as well go and get that $25.
Fair enough.
Oh, okay.
Absolutely.
Pete, talk about it.
Well, from a state senate standpoint, you have 9 different districts that touch Marion County. 2 of those are controlled by Democrats. And we know that Mayor Joe Hogshead in this most recent election won with 75% of the vote.
Yes. He often mentions that.
Yeah. So there are a lot of Democrats in Marion County, and yet the way that the lines are drawn, you have politicians choosing their voters instead of the other way around. So I think you don't, as far as the gerrymandering conversation and how important that is with the census, you don't have to go any further than looking at the Indiana State Senate in Marion County to see just how horrendous it is when they draw some of these lines and how it ends up with a supermajority it's been almost a decade now.
Absolutely. And then you end up with crap legislation that we just talked about in the opening of the show. All right. Pete, man, see, I know a little bit about your story. Go on, tell the people who you are and where you come from.
I will. All right. So I was raised on the west side of Indianapolis.
West side?
Yep. My mom was a dietitian. My dad was a small business owner. And they really raised my sisters and I to not measure our worth by dollars and cents alone, but how we serve our community. And so I'm running for state senate for 2 reasons. For one, I believe very deeply in community service. And for 2, I've lived through a lot of the challenges that our district faces. My dad was a small business owner, owned a small machine shop, and I watched him from the time I was a little kid work his butt off. Do everything that they tell you to do to be successful in America. Learn how to build things, serve in the military, be an entrepreneur, own land, all these things. He tried to do it all. And yet the decisions from people in power undermined him. And as we've seen, particularly in this state, but across the entire Midwest, government decisions sent a lot of good paying jobs overseas where workers are taken advantage of for the most part. And so that was difficult for our family to go through. But, as I continue to grow, I realized that this wasn't just our bad luck, right?
Okay.
This was an issue that was spreading across the Midwest and across the country. And then on my path to service, I decided that the first thing I would do was become an Army Ranger.
Ooh, wait, whoa. Army Ranger. Aren't those the badass dudes that jump out of helicopters and are amphibious and just do everything and can get in the boxing ring?
And sea and air, that's
right. My goodness.
I will say that is...
Ranger, you just couldn't be the cook, huh?
No, the commercials, though, are probably about 10% of your time. The other 90% is not very glorious, I will tell you that. But yeah, I was in 7th grade when 9/11 happened, and I wanted to fight America's enemies.
I just want to thank you for allowing me to feel super old at this very moment, Mr. 7-year-old, when 9/11 happened.
No, you said 7th grade, not 7th.
I think you said 7th grade. I'm sorry. All I heard was 7. I was like, all I heard was 7. I'm like,
No, a little bit older than that.
Okay, not much. 12.
But you know, I wanted to go serve the country, and I wanted to fight our enemies. I wanted to do things like, you know, bring democracy and freedom and protect those who couldn't protect themselves, because there is evil out there. Right?
Yes.
And unfortunately, what I ended up doing was fighting a war in Iraq that was based completely on lies, told by politicians who lined their own pockets while people like me fought in bed and blood. Yes, absolutely. And then I fought in the war in Afghanistan, where, you know, we had a reason to go there, but now looking back, almost 2 decades later, I have yet to find somebody that can tell me what the end result, what the end goal we are trying to accomplish there is. And so that was a rough part of my life. And then a number of injuries, including a parachuting accident, led me to be medically retired from the United States Army. So
jumping out a perfectly good plane.
Yeah, I know. I was that crazy guy. I can't believe it. And that process was just grueling. It took almost 3 years. And during those 3 years, I was not allowed to move forward in life in any way. Obviously, I wasn't moving forward in the Army. They knew that I had one foot out the door. I couldn't go to school because my contract with the Army was technically up. I was only there waiting on the paperwork to finish. And then I couldn't get surgeries either to fix my injuries, because if I got surgeries, the whole system, the whole thing has to start over. So the military's response was, here's a lot of painkillers and wait. And I waited and I waited and I waited, and I got into a deeper and darker hole. And eventually, I started reaching out to all my representatives. And the only one who really did anything about it was Senator Joe Donnelly. And his office heard my story. And after taking up my cause, I was back home with my family within 6 weeks.
All right, Joe.
Yeah, he really helped me out. And it couldn't have come at a better time, because I was angry. I was angry like so many people in our district are, right? They've seen these businesses leave. They've felt left behind by politicians. I didn't think politicians, elected leaders, gave a damn about my family. And I didn't think that my service or my sacrifice mattered, because I was sinking into a hole.
Hold up, dog. What you mean it didn't matter? I mean, Colin Kaepernick took a knee during the anthem, and 45 said that he was being an asshole and he didn't care about the military. Surely, after that rhetoric, the elected officials care about our veterans. I mean, my man still doesn't have a job. That one man still does not have a job. Surely our elected officials care about our veterans.
You would think so, right? And I could go on that topic for hours. But
maybe we will one day.
As I said, the only person that did anything, there was one elected representative. But what that did was it showed me that you know, government can most definitely affect your life for the negative. But the right person at the right place at the right time can also alter the course of one's life for good.
What he said.
Yeah. And you know, I have lived through both the negative effects and the positive, and now I want to continue my service to this country by running for office, because I think that government needs more elected leaders that have lived through these challenges and are there to serve people. Not just their own ambitions. Oh,
so you mean that guy that had bone spurs probably shouldn't talk about trans people wanting to be in the service?
Amen. Absolutely.
JP, talk to the people. Tell them who you are and where you come from.
Well, I guess also a West Sider, although a little further west.
We're going to have a West Side off?
Listen, okay, real talk. I was raised on the West Side, too.
All right.
But I was probably the most eastern of West Siders. I was on Michigan Road. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Right.
No, so I was actually born in Danville and went to Avon schools until about...
Rural man.
Well, you know, it was a good place to grow up, but I enjoy being in Indianapolis a lot better. But so that's where I was born and grew up. But I think I always had an interest in politics. I always knew that the politics of the day weren't serving people very well. And I think that I didn't know what to do with that when I was younger. I mean, I had gotten all the right kind of signals and upbringing from my family about equality and fairness and the way the world ought to be. But clearly that's not the way the world was. And again, you know, I didn't know exactly what to do with those feelings, and probably didn't at all until sometime around the middle of the Bush presidency, when things all started going
Jesse
terribly
Jackson
wrong.
told us to get out the bushes.
Yeah, and so, I'd actually started going to IUPUI, but didn't like the degree I was pursuing, and so I stopped going, and I started working warehouse jobs. I was a Teamster at UPS for a year.
I got Teamster at Pepsi. Go on,
there you go.
Yeah.
I got my real estate license when I was 21 and kind of did that on and off. And during working for warehouses, I worked at Guitar Center Distribution Center for 4 years, which was actually
that
really
was pretty
great.
cool.
I met a lot of really cool people.
Yeah.
But, as the Bush presidency really started to have a more and more impact on people's lives, it made me realize that I needed to go back, and I cared about public service, and it gave me some direction on where to funnel that energy.
Sure.
And
Sure.
I think another kind of seminal moment for me was the rise of Barack Obama. Seeing that whole primary process play out, I can remember as that primary was playing out, and the Iowa caucuses were approaching. I was going to be on a road trip to California. And so I was plotting my path, and I thought, oh, well, I'll be going through Iowa, like right around that time. Let's see who has an event that's like at least somewhat along the interstate, so I'm not taking a 4-hour detour.
Right.
And I was kind of between candidates, but I thought he was fantastic. But I was able to get in to see him in a small gymnasium the night before the Iowa caucuses.
Wow.
It was the night before. And it changed my life. I mean, it was the first time I'd really seen a politician talk in a way that I really believed what they were saying.
Okay.
That they had a vision to make things better. They had a vision that was different than what we were living under, and that he really believed it.
Wow.
And so from then on, I was a big supporter, and it really, within a year or two, spurred me to go back to school, finish my degree, ended up studying political science with minors in geography and history.
Oh, so that you will actually know where you are on the planet as you're serving, and you understand the history that got us to this point.
Yeah, no, I think political science, history, and geography all play into each other.
Yes, they
in
do.
A way that a lot of people don't really understand.
They don't.
But and so that was really important for me. So as I was finishing that, process, I knew I wanted to get involved in politics. But I remember I would tell people. Or they would say, "What are you going to do with that political science degree?" And I'd say, "Well, I want to work in politics." And they would kind of laugh at me and like,
"Aren't you adorable?"
That's adorable. But I'd also gotten some other good advice, which was do an internship. That if you want to get involved in something, do an internship, get your foot in the door, work hard, and impress the people around you. And so that's what I did. I was Joel Miller was county chair at the time, and he gave me an opportunity. Somebody who was a 30-year-old graduate, non-traditional student. Who had, whose family name is not famous, who doesn't give money to campaigns, and said, all right, show me what you can do. And I started out as an unpaid intern at 30 years old, and then I was offered a job as a project manager, and then I moved up to political director, and then executive director at the Marion County Democratic Party. So it gave me...
And that's when our paths crossed.
That's when our paths crossed. It might have actually been, I might have been political director when our paths crossed, but and that, that definitely changed my life. That allowed me to work really hard, impress people, show them what I could do, and it led to the next opportunity, which ended up being at the treasurer's office. And my background in real estate ended up being an even better fit than I could have imagined. When I got into the position at the treasurer's office, I realized that I understood the property tax bill. I understood how it was figured. I understood how it affected people, how it affected people's house payments, things like that.
The property value, all of that.
All that. And so it was, like I said, an even better fit than I could have imagined. And what I thought might have been a kind of a temporary stop-off job turned into a career and something that I absolutely love. And now I'm the operations deputy under the current Marion County Treasurer, Claudia Fuentes, who was the first Latina elected countywide. So
yes, she's and the only executive level in the entire state, Latina in the entire state.
That's absolutely right.
The first ever.
And so she's been an incredible mentor for me and given me opportunity as well, and allowed me to kind of prove myself and work hard. And so about a year and a half ago, she said, I'm term limited, and there's nobody else knocking down the door trying to figure out how this all works and who's interested. Have you ever thought about maybe running for treasurer? And I said, well, no, I hadn't really, but now I am. Let me give it a thought. And so I thought about it for a week or two, and I realized, I love my job. I love the team that we've built, and I just want to keep doing it. And it sounds corny, and I don't think people maybe talk to me on this level about taxpayers, but I actually do care
about the taxpayers.
Yeah. And I make the point often that, when when it comes to property taxes, when the result of not paying them is losing your home, the taxpayers absolutely deserve the best customer service possible. They deserve an answer to their question the day they ask it, and they deserve respect when they're getting those answers. And so I am committed to doing that for the taxpayers, and I actually really, really care about it a lot.
I really love that. Because I believe, just like you, that government service really is a customer service type of enterprise. When people are asking me getting into that stuff, I say one of the first things you do is just got to treat people right. You know, they are your customers.
Right.
I work in the trustee's office now. Everybody who comes through there is a customer at the trustee's office, right? They're a citizen, they're a taxpayer. You just have to treat them right, like you would a customer.
Well, all right for all of us local municipal workers, because I work for the surveyor's office.
That's right. So you get it.
Yeah, and you know what? Running for the treasurer is important in this big election year because obviously, especially with a Hoosier running as a president and having a gubernatorial race and all the House seats and all the congressional seats, this race could get lost. And I think it's important that we understand how important municipal races are. You working at the trustee's office, I know you understand. Because we always tell you all politics are local. And like he said, if your home is you're about to lose your home over taxes, don't you want to make sure that you have somebody that you can talk to who understands the system, who understands properties, understands the impact property values have on homes. That's someone that's why I think it's important that we still continue to highlight, right, this municipal race. There are a lot of municipal races around the state. I ain't gonna lie to you, I won't get them all on. There's a lot.
We could clone you.
Oh, you know what? Indiana is not ready for another Dana. They're trying to get rid of this one.
I was just going to say, it's also very important for somebody to be in that office who realizes how easy it is to fall into some of these things, right? Just because maybe you forgot to pay your taxes or something happened with a family member, that doesn't mean that you're a terrible person. And it doesn't mean that you should be forgotten about and we're just going to take your property. You have to talk to them, figure out what's going on, give them a path to get back to where they should be.
Because it's all about the people.
Absolutely.
Always about the people. Now, one of the things, Josh, when I first actually laid eyes on you, I do believe it was at a Marion County Young Democrats meeting. I think Ashley Gervitz was the president at the time, and I think you might have been vice president or secretary.
Sounds right. I think I was on the executive board at the time. Yeah.
And you had a presence, right? I didn't know anybody in that room. I was just this loudmouth chick who says she's running against Brian Bosman. I'm just showing up at every event. That's it. And you had a presence. And then after my election was over, Zach Adamson was one of the folks that asked me and encouraged me, or actually during my campaign, to join Stonewall. And when I joined Stonewall, you were the president of Indiana Stonewall Democrats. Talk about what it has meant to you to be in leadership in a lot of our constituency caucuses for our party.
Absolutely. So with Marion County Young Democrats, I think I was political director at the time at the county party. I had, I think it was a state house intern named Aaron Ketzenberger, if you've ever heard of him.
Gee, would that be the matinee idol?
That's matinee idol. So he came to me, and I'd never met him before. He just said, hey, I can't find anything about a Marion County Young Democrats. Does that exist? And I said, well, actually, no, it doesn't. You're right. And he said, well, I think we should start it. And I said, well, I think you're right. And so we teamed up to get that going, and we actually passed out leaflets for the very first meeting at the big REFRA rally in March of 2015.
Wow.
That was our number one recruiting tool. And that was part of the reason that he had approached and other young people were asking, was because young people were just so disgusted by what was happening at the State House in 2015 and felt so powerless. And so we had our first meeting in April. I think it was April 6th. I know that because actually Chris Roman just asked me what the date of the first meeting was. It was April 6th of 2015 that we had our first meeting, and we had an incredible turnout. I think there was 50 or 60 people there. Andre Carson came and spoke. I mean, it was incredible. And what that has turned into now, the momentum that's built under leadership of past presidents like Ashley Gervitz and Brandon Evans and others, has turned into real results. And that's why I think organization matters. That's why the work matters. And so that's one example of how I've tried to use my time to elect more Democrats, because I believe the government will always serve people better if there's Democrats running it. That's how I feel.
I got nothing. You can't say anything better than that.
And then with Stonewall Democrats, again,
Sorry.
the attacks on the LGBTQ plus community continued. REFRA was not the end of it, and so I was really proud to be able to be brought into that board. I think it was actually current chair Kate Sweeney Bell was on the board, and she grabbed me after work one day and said, "Hey, come over here. You should join this board."
That's how it happens.
I'm like, okay, I'll come to this meeting, and within months, I was president, and but I was also thankful to be able to step up into another position of leadership that could actually change something, could move the needle. And so we went. I mean, you were there. We went to prides every summer and registered voters. We boosted candidates. We raised money for candidates, and that organization continues
to grow,
to do those things as well. And so I'm just incredibly proud to have been.
All right, just so y'all know, as president of Stonewall Democrats, I'm looking for the next young Josh. I can't do this one forever, y'all. Can't do it forever. So, Pete, your history in Indiana politics is obviously very different than Josh's, but your passion is still the same. Talk about because you are new, and the buzzword these days is the outsider. Everyone's
Are you an outsider?
I think so.
The outsider. Talk about how in contrast, right? Because I did that on purpose, right? In contrast, being the new guy and the things that you see from a different perspective and how it motivates you.
Yeah. Well, I think that I didn't learn as quickly as Josh maybe how important this stuff was. I was really raised to not worry too much about what the government was doing. Worry about what you were doing. Get your stuff done, and you'll be okay, right? And that's a wonderful idea, and it just happens to not be the truth, right? And so the things that happened to me made me realize just how important these decisions are. And then, when one of the first things I did is when I finally got out of the military. I was pretty beat up. I was on a lot of pain medication. I mean, they had me on fentanyl, Oxycontin, all kinds of stuff. And I went to our VA, and they were like, "Hey, this got to stop. This is too much." And I agreed with them. I was like, "Yeah, I think it's causing more problems than it's solving." Well, it also happens that at the same time I was out of the military, a friend of mine was like, "You need to try cannabis. This is going to help you relax from all your experiences. It's going to help you with all the physical pain you're dealing with. It's going to help you sleep, And I did, and I don't think I would have been able to get out of that hole like I had, get off all those medications that they put me on without cannabis. So,
what you know about that?
I'm getting surgeries. I'm trying to heal really from everything, and I'm at IUPUI, and somebody reached out to me. It was like, "Have you heard about these folks, Hoosier Veterans for Medical Cannabis?" And I said, "No, but I'd love to be involved because I believe deeply in the cause." I mean, there's the medical aspect of it, but then there's all the other things from the racial disparities that go into the prohibition of cannabis.
I didn't even have to bring it up. He brought it up all on his own.
Yeah.
That means he's aware, people. That means he's aware.
I'm trying. So anyway, that was going up to the State House was my first experience.
Okay.
At this lobbying for that was my first experience at the State House at all. And
a good lobbyist.
I'm trying, like I said. But what I realized is, we as veterans were trying to get our point across, which was that, veterans in a lot of ways were ground zero for the opioid epidemic. So there's a lot of legitimate pain. It's a difficult life, right? But what I also saw was all these mothers standing in front of these Congress people, these senators, describing their child with epilepsy or some of the other things, things like CBD oil and cannabis had changed their lives, right? Allowed their children to live a normal life again. And they poured their hearts out, and it just met a brick wall. They just said thank you and didn't do anything about it.
You know what? Real talk about cannabis. I just want to just say this so people know that I've said it and we can move on. Legalization of marijuana is coming. It's not coming because of the advocacy that we're doing in the streets. It's not coming because we have the medical evidence. It's going to come because the people who are already controlling the industry will give our legislators permission to go ahead and legalize it. I mean, was that any different than gaming in Indiana? Was it any different than when it was with the Sunday alcohol sales? See, we already know Illinois raised over $3.4 million on the first day of the sale of legal marijuana. Listen, y'all, it's coming. And I know, and don't get me wrong, I will advocate for it as well. But no, it's coming, but it's not coming until the big boys can price you out of the industry. I just want y'all to think about that.
I think that's an important point because it is going to come eventually, and it's going to be up to people like us and our friends and people involved in politics to make sure that whatever gets put in place is equitable.
Absolutely.
And if it's not, then we could have as many problems as we had before.
Absolutely.
And if I could, you may not think that the marijuana issue has many parallels with the Treasurer's Office, but I believe it does, and let me tell you why.
Well, bring it on, baby.
So part of the reason that we struggle to fund schools, to fund infrastructure, to fund all the things we want to do at the local level is because of the state-imposed property tax caps.
Yep.
We cannot have property taxes above 1% for residential, 2% for rentals, and 3% for, I think it's farmland. And so our hands are tied. And when that went into effect, it affected the budgets of all the counties in the state. And so everybody's looking for new sources of revenue. And the fact that we haven't really taken this revenue source seriously yet is really sad. We've got all the states around us
they're doing it,
collecting a lot of money that are going to help them revitalize their states. And if we don't get it done soon and we don't get it done right, we're going to miss an opportunity that could help
trust
all
me.
of our...
Well, there's enough examples out there now for us to get it right. Colorado's been doing it. California's been doing it.
Absolutely.
There's enough examples on how to implement this and get regulations in place.
That is a typical Republican strategy, right?
Honey.
You see it even with this issue of teacher pay, right? We need to study it. We need to get it right. It's not.
You just made me
rocket
shimmy
science.
right there. You just bring up all the topics, baby. You just bring them up.
It's not rocket science,
It's
right?
not-
Teachers are some
right.
of the most important public servants we have in our community.
Absolutely.
A good teacher changes lives, sets
So,
people up on the right track.
Listen, without a teacher, can you
We
have a
gotta study
fireman?
it.
Without a teacher, can you have a law enforcement officer? Without a teacher, can you have our military? Without teachers, can you have scientists? And without teachers, can you have doctors and lawyers? I mean, come on.
You're
Come on.
absolutely right. I get thanked for my service often, and I really appreciate that when people do it. But my response to them is, as much as I appreciate it, it takes more than veterans to make a great
Absolutely.
society. It takes firefighters. It takes police officers. It most certainly takes teachers. It takes all of us to make a great society.
I will tell you this. There's one thing about veterans that the average person doesn't have to deal with, and that is being willing to make the ultimate sacrifice. I know that we as people who want to be in policy making, we don't make the ultimate sacrifice. And when you sign your name on the line to say, I'm going to make I'm going to be the nation's secret security. I'm going to take the bullet. And I'm just going to put it out there for our nation. That speaks volumes. Granted, there are I don't think that is the measure of patriotism. I think there are multiple levels of patriotism, but in my opinion, when you say that you are willing to make the ultimate sacrifice, regardless of what your end goal is. Maybe you're just doing it because you want to get an education, or maybe you want to do it, whatever the case may be. That is serious business. And so when people are thanking you, especially folks like me who are chickens, I couldn't even get out of basic training because there's mud in basic training. And what was I going to do with my hair? Locks or no locks? Mud? Anyway, so there I know. My shoes. Well,
Don't worry, they'd make you shine again the next day.
Honey, what? But I'm just saying, so please understand there's that, but we also know that there are other levels of commitment to our society, right?
Absolutely.
And we also recognize that there are, like you said, there are evil people out there that are willing to sacrifice human life for personal gain. Indiana is an agro state for the most part. You get outside of Indy, Fort Wayne, Lake County, Evansville, it's an agro state. What could we be doing if we're growing good hemp? What could we be doing by creating another crop?
We've got some of the most fertile soil in the entire world.
As long as they're not poisoning it, by the way, those damn coal ash pits.
I took that up because I believe so strongly in what America can be.
Come on.
We constantly strive to move forward, to be more equitable, to ensure that everybody has equality of opportunity, right? And we face our challenges, and I'll tell you that there was a big part of me that didn't want to do this campaign.
Okay.
That
what scared you about it?
Well, for one, I knew how much work it would be.
Okay.
Right? I've been around politics long enough. I worked in the 2018 cycle. It is a lot of work. Right? You have to raise money. You have to get volunteers. You have to also put yourself out there and realize that there will always be somebody who doesn't agree with you, and that's okay. And so it was a little intimidating. And I'm an optimist. I believe that America will get through this very difficult time that we're in right now.
Optimist Club crew.
Hell yeah, absolutely. But then I sat back for a second and I'm listening to the news and what's going on, and I'm like, well, there's nothing that says for sure that we'll get through this difficult time. Like we'll get through that, like we have gotten through other difficult times. And if I didn't step up now and try to bring people together to, as the motto of my campaign is listen, serve, and unite, then I would regret it forever.
Absolutely.
So
listen, serve, and
despite
unite.
all the difficulties that come along with it, doing a full-time job, family, and this, I really believe in what this country can be. And that's why I
And Josh, that's one of the things that we've always talked about. It used to drive me nuts when people would ask, well, who are the Democrats putting up to run for office? Listen, we can ask all the people that we want to ask to run for office, but unless they're willing to give up a huge portion of their life to run for office, they're not going to do it. You've been in the trenches, my man. Talk about, the sacrifices that are made. It's not about who Democrats are putting up. It's about who is willing to put their lives on hold to run for office.
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest things that decides whether we win or not is who is willing to make that sacrifice of time. The best candidates, shine because you can tell they have a passion for it and because they're willing to give that time. And you can always tell when a candidate is holding back, when they're not willing to give that time, and maybe they were talked into running or whatever. But you're right, it's rare to find people who are really willing to put it all on the line, to kind of put their life on hold, to knowingly stress out their family.
Knowingly.
It's like taking on a second job. It is taking on a second job.
Absolutely
and more. And so it's.
I remember when I first went to my family about this. It was a holiday. We all getting together and eating good and having a good time. And I said, I'm thinking about doing this, and it was just crickets. And I said, so this is not a situation where you guys could just not answer.
You gotta say something.
Yeah, you have to answer this because, first of all, my story is so much about my family as well. But I know that I'm going to need them, and I'm going to beat Josh to the punch here a little bit. I want to thank my fiance Zane.
Well, I was just about to go there.
Yeah, and I know that he'll do the same.
Listen, Josh is married. You're about to have a fiance, and listen, you're planning yours right now. So she want everything. I know she does. Yeah. And I know your spouse, honey. Love you, boo.
I try to do. He has been fantastic. Eddie is my husband, and he has been so supportive, and he never told me not to run. But he did make sure that I knew that there had to be some boundaries, that we had to find some balance, right? Like, yes, I'm giving it my all, but I still got to mow the lawn every once in a while. I still got to do the dishes every once in a while. And if I don't make dinner like one day a week, I'm in trouble. And that's fair, right? Like, you can't give it all. You can't turn your life off. You can't turn everybody in your life off to do this thing. So you do have to find a balance.
I never learned it.
It's hard, and I'm not sure if I'm achieving that balance any given day, but I'm hoping over the aggregate it
balances out.
Put in the effort.
Yeah, so I try to thank him as much as I can, and every time I get the opportunity, and he's been an incredible supporter as well. So.
Well, one of the things I try to do is when I get an opportunity to go to fundraisers and events, and if I'm running into spouses of candidates or elected officials, I often pull them aside and thank them, because I know how difficult it can be, and if that appreciation isn't shown, sometimes it can be detrimental to the relationship. And I'm not trying to bring anybody down, but that is just part of
Sure.
what I do in this thing, because having been in a relationship and no longer in one, because of how much energy I put into this thing, I always, what would I do differently? One of the things I will do is make sure that I go talk to these spouses, go talk to the girlfriends, the boyfriends, the fiancés, and say, hey, thank you for what you do. Because the bottom line, the mates, the partners, y'all the backbone and the strength. So because
Amen.
we get tired out here. We get tired of getting shot at with arrows of words that are just horrible. We get tired, and we go home to that safe space and get that warm hug and the I love yous, and we're ready to go again. But anyway.
And by the way, relationships are hard without a campaign. By the way, so I mean, yes.
Because it's almost like you're having, not only is it a second job, but it's a second relationship. You're literally because you're creating, you need to create lasting and meaningful relationships with people that you need to donate, to people who you want to vote for you, to help volunteer for you, or to help you find volunteers.
And there is so much apathy out there these days. I mean, I think that the number one thing I found when knocking on doors in the last 2 cycles is not, I love Republicans or I love Democrats. It was, they're all crooks. I don't want to talk to you about them.
What's the point?
So you're so right. You have to build that relationship because unfortunately right now people do not believe that their elected leaders care about them. They don't believe that they're going to serve.
Well, speaking of knocking on doors, I know both of y'all have been out canvassing. I know you have. What is... You got a whole county trying to run for. I get it.
Well, I'm thinking about JD, the summer of JD.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yes. Oh yeah. Because you were like that guy for him too. I mean, listen. You are about electing Democrats, and you have always been about electing Democrats. But talk about this is the 2020 cycle, right? 2019. Our municipal races. I mean, as Democrats, we did really, really well. It was exciting, especially in Marion County. It was exciting, and it was a far cry from 2016, right? Talk about, but times have changed, right?
Absolutely.
Talk about what you're hearing, and y'all can just banter back and forth on this one. What you're hearing when you go to the door, especially since you're running for one of those offices where it's administrative and it is about making sure that people stay in their homes, and you're trying to, you got an uphill battle because even if you win, you might be one of 11. Talk about the things that you guys are hearing on the streets.
The number one thing that I hear about, I think, and is also the most important thing that the State House does, is education. People realize that so many issues in our society stem from the lack of education. And they also realize that the way that our State House has decided to allocate resources does not take into account hardly at all the socioeconomic impacts of where that child is growing up or their family environment as they grow up. And I think people want to see change in that.
I mean, that is so. I mean, I know as Democrats we preach to the choir, but I didn't prep. I don't prep people. This is what this man is telling you how he feels and how he sees things. I'm just saying, y'all, get on board.
And I think education is something that spans kind of all levels of government.
Yes,
absolutely.
It's something I certainly heard in 2018 when I was working for J.D. Ford, and it's something that people. It's one of the few things that people do connect to property taxes and understand that it's connected to that. And so education is absolutely vital. And sometimes I do something on the property tax due dates, which is the date that everybody wants to come in and pay their property tax. So there's a line out the door. But I like to stay in there and kind of sort the traffic, make sure they're in the right line, talk to people. But it gives me an opportunity to really engage and find out what's on their mind. And some people want to spar, and I've had people say, well, what are my property taxes going to?
Yeah.
And I'm able to answer them. And then, but I'll even have people, they'll say, well, I don't have any kids, and I'm ready for that too. Okay, I don't have any kids either, but I want every kid in my neighborhood to be well educated with some after school programs and all the best so that they can grow up and be awesome members of society.
Absolutely. Plus, I'm going to get,
with that?
And you know what? And I'm going to get old one day. Right. And I may need some assistance.
I need a real smart nurse to take care of me.
I need somebody to know which medication they're giving me. I need them to be able to read that chart the right way and understand the dosage and what those dosages mean. So education seems, that's one of the big things you guys are hearing out here knocking on these doors. And it just seems to me like, Governor Holcomb, on his first slide of his 2020 agenda was reframing the narrative of who Indiana is so we can attract more businesses. But see, he wants to reframe the narrative. I want to fix the problem. See, he wants to just pretend like the problem isn't there and sweep it under the rug. But until you can change the state of the mind molders, the ones that are inspiring the future of our state, you changing your narrative ain't gonna do nothing.
Well, and speaking of significant others and relationships, my fiance is actually her parents are from Afghanistan. They fled after the Soviets invaded.
About that?
And so they have felt the rhetoric that comes from the top down that is all about instead of offering complex solutions to complex problems, we just say, I'm going to give you an easy solution and it's that person's fault, right? And it ignores so much good that these people do in our society. It boggles my mind. And so we do. Another thing I hear at the doors is people are very fed up with the fact that Indiana seems to only make the news about bad things. RIFRA, right? Or
teacher pay.
Teacher pay, or firing the teacher at Cathedral because of their...
Shelley Fitzgerald,
yeah,
yes.
And people are they
Trying
don't
to get her
feel
to run
that
an 88.
represent... Yes.
Oh, I am trying. She keeps telling me she has a basement I can borrow.
Oh, Lord.
But people don't feel like that. I find that people don't feel like that represents their community.
It doesn't.
They feel like they're much more loving and inclusive and want to see a diverse society than is coming out.
Absolutely, and I'm worried that we're going to miss an opportunity. So we have a huge budget surplus. You should speak to this more.
But talk about it.
But there's an opportunity here. We have a huge budget surplus in the state of Indiana, and all the Republicans want to do is spend it on giving more corporate giveaways and things that are not going to improve the state.
Not true, Josh. They want to fix the pig barn.
Oh,
They
the
want
pig barn.
They want to put 54 million into a pig barn.
And so it's going to take a Herculean effort to make sure that we don't squander this on something that is not going to actually make the lives of Hoosiers better.
Well, and say it's not just the surplus, but we also have a reserve.
Yeah.
We have a surplus and a reserve, so we're just
absolutely.
sitting on money. Sitting on
it. And
it.
I think when it comes to economic development, to attracting good paying jobs, you have to take it case by case. But I have been looking at this quite a bit during my run for state senate. And what I find is that the vast majority of cases that I can see, it is crazy how much money is being taken from hardworking Hoosiers and given to large corporations. I mean, there are instances that you can find where these corporations say, well, we're offering all these high-paying jobs. Well, then you come to find out 75% of the jobs are about $35,000, $40,000 a year. And then if you take into account all the tax breaks, they're getting about $15,000 per employee. We as taxpayers are paying for jobs.
We're subsidizing
and
employers.
If these employers, if these corporations don't value the community they're in, don't want to see their people be successful, then we have no business giving them any sort of break for being here.
Well, I don't know about y'all. I'm with this Pete. I'm with this Pete. I'm with you.
But you're right. You're right.
You're right.
A lot of times
I'm with that Pete.
they'll try to act like, well, this project wouldn't have happened unless we got these abatements, and most of the time that's not true. That they would have done the project, they would have built the building, they would have brought the jobs anyway. It was just an extra giveaway on top. That was the cherry on top, and so I think that's what we got to stop giving away.
And then we also have to understand and recognize that it's not always about the financial gains for civically minded businesses. They want to make sure that their employees are welcomed. And, America is more diverse than Indiana, right? So in Indiana, African Americans make up 9% of the population, but nationwide, we're over 15% of the population. So we are more diverse as a country than we are as a state. And when businesses are looking at where they're going to relocate their employees, they want to know, will they have proper education? Will their families be able to give their kids the education that they want at a secondary and primary level? Will they be able to love who they want to love? I mean, Senator J.D. Ford actually has to still introduce legislation to say that once we, as the gay folk, say we want to get married, we don't get kicked out of our homes or get fired from our jobs. Because, see, that can happen. Real talk. But they don't want to bring people here when they know they're going to be mistreated. People don't want to even stay here. We have we have a brain drain with IU, Purdue, Rose-Hulman, Notre Dame, some of the most amazing colleges and universities in the nation. Kids get those educations and they gone. They're not coming back here because quality of life matters.
Yeah. And diversity and inclusion matters. And I think Indiana, being run by the Republicans, has sent the wrong message, and it's pushing people away when it comes to diversity.
We got to bring back
and businesses. I mean, honestly, if you want economic development, you got to look at things holistically. You can't just be singularly focused on the bottom line, because return on investment doesn't necessarily mean always monetary investment. You have to invest in the community. You have to invest in the environment. You have to invest in multiple ways.
Well, and I think that the key word you're saying right there is investment, right? I remember remember a conversation with my dad when I was a little kid very clearly. And he was talking to me about him joining the military and how they pay for his education. I said, wow, that's a really good deal for you, And he said, no, son, it's a great deal for the United States government. I said, I don't understand. What do you mean? He said, well, first of all, they got 4 years of service out of me in the military. And then secondly, I pay way more in taxes because I got a college education than they ever paid
because it's
to fund my
income.
education.
Yes.
It is an investment, right?
Yes.
It is you give something up front, you invest up front, and in the long run, it will help the entire society.
And it seems like these guys have just forgotten that part. They're just looking at, they don't have any real vision beyond this election cycle. I have yet to hear, other than from Dr. Woody Myers, and I'm going to have the other gubernatorial candidate on, I haven't heard their 20-year vision. What does Indiana look like 20 years from now? Are we still going to be having these low-paying jobs? Are we still not interested in increasing into a livable wage? Are we still interested in busting up unions so they can't collect the bargain? What does Indiana look like in 20 years? And why aren't we focused on that?
I think, for people in the Republican Party, it's hard to see because it would have to include diversity, right?
Diversity of thought?
There is no future without diversity, and so I think it's hard for them to look beyond that. But we all know that diversity is absolutely vital, that the best teams are teams that have diversity, that the best outcomes are created by diverse teams working together. And
whoa, wait a minute now, fellas. I'm sitting across the table from two very cisgender white guys. Why do y'all get it? So what is it? What? Tell me to the people.
Right.
Cisgender white guys. Explain it.
So for me, it's been a whole lot of things. But number one, I was raised right. So let's start with that.
Hey, mama.
I had a mom and a dad who raised me right. And from there, I learned more from the Democratic Party, from party leaders like Joel Miller, who said this, our candidates need to look like a class picture. If it doesn't, we're not representing this county correctly. And the same thing with working at the Treasurer's Office. We are setting the curve, exceeding the curve when it comes to diversity at the Treasurer's Office. They recently did a study. I don't know if you've seen the diversity study results, but the Treasurer's Office is setting the curve for that. We have more than 50% of our staff are African American or Latino in a county that is not even necessarily that diverse. So we are exceeding that diversity even within the county.
Surveyor's office the same way.
And the thing is, the way it matters who's in the room interviewing. It matters who's reviewing
the resumes.
And if you don't have that, if you don't have people who were raised right, educated by a party who believes in diversity, and really had all these influences getting you to that right space, then you don't end up with diversity.
Dog, the way you say raised right, I'm beginning to think your mama black. You're a cisgender white dude. How do you get it?
So I think there's a few reasons. First thing, there's no bigotry in a firefight. Right? When you're fighting for your life, the people next to you, who they love, who they like to sleep with, who they worship, none of that matters. What matters is that you're going to get together as a team, and you have to move forward together, or you're all going to pass. You're going to die.
And not an A in passing.
And so that really learned a lot of valuable lessons. That those things are not as important as the values one holds. I think also, what happened to freedom, right? There's a big part of me is that simply says, if you are in your own home and you are hurting nobody, what business is it of mine what you do?
Well, now Pete, I like you, and I'm Team Pete now. Team Pete C. Not I'm just gonna let you know. Them freedoms really weren't for everybody when we started. But because our Constitution is written in the way that it's written, it means that it's a living, breathing document, and we can and continue to improve it. I mean, but people, again, I don't understand it, and I will never get it. I don't understand why people feel like they can control other people. If I was, and I posted it, if I was meant to be controlled, I would have came with a remote. All right.
There's one more thing that I would like to add.
Okay.
I think that is, we have to be very pragmatic in our policy and how we move things forward. But
Oh, you want to use your brain and be logical?
No. As a matter of fact, the opposite. What I was going to say is I was raised to be charitable and be loving to my neighbor. Right? I mean, I think the base of my politics really is love, and to say, that no matter how different we are, you are just as valuable member of this community as I am, and you should have just as many freedoms and opportunities as I do, right? And I think that is very uncommon in not only our state government, but in government across the board today.
Yo, I slightly speechless, but you know I'm Indiana's own. I always got something to say. Yo, thank y'all so much. The hour is about up, but before we go, Pete, we'll start with you. How can people find you? How can they donate to your campaign? How can they volunteer for your campaign?
So I'm going to get all military on you guys. So we have a website, and it's PeteCowden.com. That's Pete, and then Charlie, Oscar, Whiskey, Delta, Echo, November.com. Please check out the website. We've got events. Everything you need is on there. Ways to contact me. And I desperately need your help. Please
social
come
media?
out.
Are you on social media?
Yes. So Facebook is at Pete for Senate, and Twitter and Instagram are at Pete for Indiana.
And do you have any fundraisers coming up?
Not currently. Really
Okay.
focused on this last deadline, and we did really well. I'm looking forward to that report coming out. But there will be events on the website very soon.
Excellent. All right, Josh, tell the people how they can find you other than through me.
I too have a website that I'm not going to try to use any of those letters for. So it's peters4treasure.com, and I bought Peters number 4 treasure and Peters FOR treasure.
So either one will get them there?
So either one will get you there.
That's what's up. Tech
and then
savvy, tech savvy.
Both Facebook and Twitter is Peters for Treasure.
All
so
right.
check me out, follow me, all that good stuff.
Do you have any fundraisers coming up?
No, I'm going to get through the pre-primary convention on February 8th, and then we'll be rolling with more fundraisers after that.
Excellent, excellent. Y'all, Young gets it done. I told y'all was going to love these youngins I had. And I don't mean no disrespect, y'all. Please understand.
I will take Young as long as you'll give it to me.
Because this is who our party is. I mean, listen, I know we always talk about more diversity, and we always talk about making sure that there's inclusiveness. But Josh said it best. It all depends on who is looking at those resumes, who is in the room having those conversations. I know that these two guys, if there is a need for diversity in the room, they will speak up for those of us who are marginalized. They will not stay silent when people make dumb remarks and say stupid stuff about things they don't know anything about. These are the kind of allies, and I can't even really call Josh an ally because, you know, we actually share a demographic. So
That's true.
You know, so
I guess I ought to be able to throw out there. So if I was elected as Marion County Treasurer,
what would you be?
I would be the first out county commissioner in Indiana's history, and the first millennial to win countywide in Marion County. So
That's what's up. See, and it wasn't even a big deal. He didn't even lead with that. You know what I'm saying? He just a happy gay guy. You know what I'm saying? He a happy gay guy. You know. So listen, you guys find these fine young candidates. Figure out how you can help. If they speak to your values, they speak to what you care about, reach out to them, try to help them, because especially in the Senate, we got to flip that seat. We got to get him through the pre-primary, and then we're on to amazing things in Marion County, because Marion County votes blue. Right. So listen, we got a jam-packed schedule. We are trying to get as many candidates in before this primary season that we can. If I've been trolling Facebook to see who's posting that they have signed. They went to their county and they signed up to run for office. I'm shooting them messages because I want to make sure that you guys are aware of all the people that are looking to serve our community. I want you to hear their voices so that as citizens, you can be more involved in this citizen government. Also, the year is young. You guys are planning your annual events. You're planning all these events to get people involved and engaged. If Indiana's Own can help you in any kind of way, because you know I am the deputy chair for the state party, if there's something I can do, invite me to your event, invite me to speak. I will. If we get it on the calendar, I will be there. I will travel to any one of these 92 counties anytime to make sure that people are motivated, educated, and ready to get involved. All right, Indiana's Own, don't forget to apply to work at the census, 2020 census. Get her done. Indiana's Own Dana Black. Thank y'all so much for giving me your time on Thursday night. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Pete. Pete. I'm Team Pete. I'm Team Pete.
Pete C.
Pete C. Pete C. Indiana's Own Dana Black turned up. Thank you so much for joining us. Y'all have a